Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today I'm finally going to talk about the Daggerheart open beta, and I'm going to go over some of the things that I like about it and some of the things that I'm not a big fan of about it. And overall, I'm just going to tell you right now, I think it's a good game, and there's definitely a lot of room for it to improve as time goes on with this open beta. And I think it could be a very good game that if you choose to play this one instead of a Pathfinder, D&D, or whatever the heck else you want to play, this is a good alternative. For me, based on what I know about the game so far, because there's a lot to read with it. There's like 317 pages minimum, I think, for like just the opening stuff, and that's before you start reading the Ancestry stuff. That's before you start looking at community, the class stuff, all of the cards. There's a lot to read with all this, so I'm not done with it all yet. There's a lot to still go through. So what I have here is just the handful of pros and cons that I've sort of come up with as I've sort of been going through it, as I've watched the videos about it, and as I watched the session 0 and the one shot they did, which might not be a one shot. They might do something else with it, but overall, I think this is a good game, and there's definitely a foundation here for something like amazing to be made. So if you choose to play this over D&D, Pathfinder, Savage Worlds, whatever the heck else your tabletop RPG game is, I can definitely see why. It's not going to take over mine, which is D&D, but I understand people doing so. But I think it's time to go over the pros and cons. We're going to start with the pros because I feel like I want to start off being positive and then go into the negative and then sort of give my general thoughts at the end again. So moving on to the first pro, and that is going to be hope and fear. I very much like this. I think this is a very good idea. At first, I was against hope and fear. I was under the impression that it was just going to be some sort of inspiration slash anti-inspiration when we're talking about fear. But hope to me at first was very, this sounds like another resource that the players can use against the DM. And then the fear was the opposite. This was a resource that the DM could use against the players. By the way, I'm just going to say DM. I've never said GM. I've always said DM. So Dungeon Master is the words I'm going to say for the rest of my life. I don't care what game it is. Even if I were playing Pathfinder, it's DM to me. GM just sounds wrong. Anyway, moving on. Back to hope and fear. I very much like this because it's not what I thought at all. I thought, like I said, it was an inspiration thing, but it's not. It is a resource that constantly goes up and down throughout the game, constantly gets being used. You can use it to activate racial feats or ancestry feats. You can use it to activate class feats. You can use it to activate like different just outside abilities that everyone can use, like tag team attacks. You can use it to give allies advantage. It's very interesting and very cool. And the adverse is true for the DM. You can use it to activate your the monsters abilities. You can use it to sort of give disadvantage against players, much like hope can be given to give advantage to players towards other people. I think it's a very cool system that is constantly going up and down and is never going to just be a flat thing that you have. It is very interesting to me that there's just this constant resource going up and down, and I very much like it. It's definitely a lot better than what I thought it was going to be when I initially heard about it. So for me, it is a massive pro here because at first I thought this was going to be a terrible thing in the game, but after seeing it and after reading more about it, it is actually a fantastic mechanic, and I'm very, very happy it's here. So the next pro is the class slash domain customization, and I'm gonna go into a bit more about what I mean by that. First of all, each class is represented by two domains, which is kind of subclass E, but the best example is the one that they used for like creating a character, which was the warrior, which has blade and bone, and those are two domains within the warrior class. And then guardian is another class that also has the blade domain. So both warrior and guardian share the blade domain, which I think is really, really cool. I think that idea that there's two classes throughout the entire game that you could be playing that share skills and abilities, I think that's kind of interesting and really cool. And the customization of it is really cool. There's 5 like ability slots that you can have available to you at any time, and as you level up, more of them, more cards or abilities become like available to you. And I very much like the idea of how it works, where you get to pick them when you level up, but if you want to swap them out at any point, you can, which is nice. Like if you didn't take X1 when you hit level 2 instead, and you picked like this different one, but you don't like it, you can swap them out eventually when you take a long rest or a short rest, I believe it was. Or you can swap them out whenever and take the appropriate stress points for it, which I think is also a very good idea. So I very much like the idea of how this customization works, where you can mix and match abilities from each domain, and how other people can play into that, and how, this person has blade, I have blade, so we're both going to have the same ability. Overall, I think it's a very cool idea to have this sort of customization stuff going on, because it means you're not just stuck with one thing. In D&D, if you pick a subclass, you're kind of stuck with that subclass unless your DM is very open about the idea that you can change it. Like, oh, you don't like the subclass, just stay in the same class, or, do whatever you want. If you have a very lenient DM who doesn't care, as long as it's kind of early, then it doesn't matter. But this is nice because you're able to swap out basically whenever you want. You don't like this ability, well, cool, get rid of it and change it for this one. I very much like that idea, and I think it's very cool, and it leaves for a lot of refreshing times playing through the game, because, oh, I've been using this ability the entire time, I'm kind of bored of it, so I'm just going to swap it out. I think that's excellent. I think that's a great idea. The third pro is the tag team attack. I really like this idea. The tag team attack thing is really cool. When they were playing throughout the one shot they did, they used this a handful of times, and each time they did it, I was fascinated by how it works. So tag team attacks, the way it works is you need 3 hope. One person of the two who are doing a tag team attack needs 3 hope, or 2 depending on if there's like a racial ability or an ancestry ability. And it's very cool. So the way it works is you both roll your duality dice, and you take the highest roll of whichever you choose. So you can either roll high with fear or roll high with hope, and if the high with fear is the higher roll, but you would prefer to have hope, you can choose that one. So say you roll like an 18 with fear, or you roll like a 16 with hope. You can choose to take the hope, and if that still hits, you get to attack together, and you get to use both of your dice. So the attacking dice that you've been using throughout the game, you can roll like 2d6 over here and like 3d8 over here, and then you combine that number. And if you get a crit, you double all of it. It's not just the one person who got the crit. Everyone crits. I think this is a sick idea. I very much like this. I think it's incredible, and it's going to be like a really fun thing for a bunch of people to like come up with really cool, unique shit that they're doing with it. And I think it's just really cool. The tag team idea thing, when I heard that was a thing, was like, oh, that is the coolest mechanic in the game to me. And it is. I think it's a dope mechanic, and I very much enjoy it. And it was cool. Just the overall creativity that the cast came up with how they did it was very fun. So I'm very excited to see how, my players do it, because I know my players are very creative with their stuff. So when we go to play test it, because that hasn't happened yet, but when we do go to play test it, I'm very excited to see what they do with that, because it'll be cool. And my last pro is going to be the ancestries, or the races of this game. I think they're fantastic. I think they're really cool. None of them have like something way too overpowered compared to another one, which is nice. The balancing seems to be there. There was definitely a lot of thought and care taken when like creating these. But there's also like really cool just flavor stuff here, and I think that's really cool. It's nothing like there isn't anything here that is like predetermined to be like part of a class, with the exception of like Qatari, because they have like something to increase their agility stats. But that's it realistically from what I've seen out of all of these and like read over and over again on them. I like all of them. I think they're really cool. The 2 that I like the most, obviously, everyone fucking loves Ribbit. Ribbit to me is hilarious. I love the idea of like these little frog dudes, and I think they're really cool. But I'm also a big fan of the fairy race, because it's not like in D&D where like fairies are related to like Fey realm and like elves and stuff like that. These things are straight up insects, and I think that's badass. I'm not an insect person in real life, but just I think the idea of the fairies being like looser, like a lot tighterly connected to insects, is a great idea to me. So dope idea on that race, and I think there's a handful of other good races as well, but those are the 2 that stick out the most to me. And yeah, I think you obviously have your traditional stuff like a dwarf, elf, human, orc, halflings, dragonborn. Well, they're called Dracona in this game, but they're all here. Obviously, like your classic D&D races are here, or your classic fantasy races are here, and then you have the other stuff like Ribbit, Fungrill, Fairy, like I mentioned, and there's Qatari, which out of all of these, Qatari is my least favorite, just based on its ability. I think that's kind of lame, and it predetermines it to be certain classes. But overall, I think these are fantastic, and I'm very excited to see what a lot of people do with them. So yeah, overall, really cool ideas for these races, or ancestries. I'm gonna keep saying that over and over again until I get it right. But overall, very fun ideas here. Everyone loves Ribbit. Personally, I'm a big fairy person, but I understand why everyone loves Ribbit. Anyway, moving on. So we're going to be moving on to my cons now, and before I do that, I just want to point out, just because I have a couple of cons about the game doesn't mean I don't like it, okay? Just putting that out there into the ether because I feel like someone's not going to get that fact. And there's definitely things here that I'm going to not like that in my cons that I know other people are going to be like, that's dumb that you don't like that. So just putting it out there into the verse because I feel like it's important to. I still like the game, but I do need to talk about some of these things that I have an issue with. That is the point of the video. So my first con is how HP works, and realistically, it's how HP and armor and all that kind of stuff works. The damage thresholds, all of it. I'm not a fan of it. Um, I don't like the visual representation of it. I'm not a big fan of like the HP slots. I'd rather have an HP pool, and the damage threshold thing. While I get what they're going for, and I get what the whole health slot thing they're going for is, I'm not a fan of it. So the way that it works is you have X amount of HP slots based on your class, and your damage threshold is also based on your class, and it changes based on when you level up. Do you pick that, increase HP slots, increase this, and certain like ability cards that you get throughout the game changes as well. So yeah, there's that. But also armor, the way armor works is you have like if you have like a 3 in armor, you have a handful of, depending on what your armor is, you'll have armor slots. So when you get hit, that's based on evasion, not armor. So if you have like a 9 in evasion and someone rolls a 10, they hit you. They then roll their damage dice, and then depending on where that damage lies in the damage threshold, they either do 1 damage, 2 damage, or 3 damage. I hate this. I would rather be, because it's never going to lead to a one shot. It'll never one shot, which really sucks to me. I like the idea of being able to one shot things, including my players. And as of right now, the way that the damage threshold thing like sort of stands and how the HP system sort of works, that's never gonna fucking happen. Unless you have 2 different fights that happen very close back to back, in which case they lost like half their health initially, and then you hit them with something really big again. But that's a small thing about all this. The reason they're doing it this way, or the reason I swear Matt said this, either if it was during the create a character video or if it was during the session 0 or the actual game itself, they said that they did it this way because they didn't want math to be involved in the game. But that's not the case. There is still math here because when you take say you have say you're getting hit and you take 15 damage. That is above your highest threshold. That is your major damage threshold. You can reduce the number by like saying you give up an armor slot and say your armor is 3. You can reduce 15 to 12, lowering it down below your major damage threshold to a minor damage, not a minor, whatever the middle one is. And that's math, And I don't understand why it's not just a health pool. Why is it not just like if I deal 15 damage to you, you have an ability to reduce the damage? That's fine. That's an okay thing. I don't hate the armor system. I actually kind of like that idea. My problem is they're like, we want to remove math so you can just, check off these boxes, and then they still have math. I really don't like the way the HP system works. I'm not a big fan of not having a health pool. I'd rather see my health pool as a player. I'd rather see my health pool go down. I'd rather not check off 6 boxes and then I'm dead or whatever. I would rather see my health pool go down from 30 to 0, in my opinion. I just feel like that is more satisfying to me as a player. That's more satisfying to me as a DM. And this is not going to change. I know this isn't going to change, and this is one of the main reasons it's not going to replace my game of D&D. Because I really just don't like the idea of HP slots. Because I just don't. I really don't. There's no like con stat in the game either, so you can't like increase or decrease the amount of slots you have based on your stats. It's based on when you level up. Do you take that like ability increase in HP slots? And I am not a fan of that. I just would rather see a health pool, I guess. But that's just me. I don't know. I don't like the HP system. So moving on to my next con, experiences. I really don't like this at all. The thing with it that I don't like is it seems so random and so vague. So the way that, for those who don't know, experiences are like these things that you get that like help you be better at certain like skills in certain moments. Except it's not true. That is not the case. The way that it works is you get to like write down a phrase or you get to write down like a thing. The example that came to mind was the one that Ashley sort of came up with for her character for the one shot, which was sticky fingers. And what she initially said sticky fingers was going to be used for was going to be like when you shake someone's hand, I have sticky fingers, so gross fingers, and I want to gross people out and sort of, it's like how she intimidates people or whatever the fuck. And that's fine. If that's what it is, if you want to have a +2 to like intimidation or whatever, like the presence score, I believe is what is in this game, that's fine. But then Matt said that's very interesting because it could be used for that, but could also be used for when you go to fall off a cliff and you have your sticky fingers, you're able to grab onto the cliff edge. What does that have to do with intimidating people? That's what I don't like about this. How vague experiences are. How vague they are. You get a +2 in scaring people with your sticky fingers, but then you get a +2 to grab onto the edge so you don't fall off and die. Those two things are totally unrelated in my opinion. The ground isn't intimidated by your sticky fingers. Yes, I get why it makes sense. I just don't like that it's super vague, that you can use these experiences in like a million different places, because it's not only going to be like, does this thing work here, DM? But it's also going to start conversations like that. It's going to start conversations like, oh, I think my sticky fingers ability would work in this instance. And then someone else is going to be like, that doesn't make sense. And then the DM's going to have to sit there and listen to the two people about their argument about why they don't think this thing works. I think this could slow down the game so badly because you're going to have to take like 10 minutes to determine if you think this sticky fingers ability will qualify here. And I really don't like how vague these are. One of the things that I really wanted Daggerheart to do before, like, to sort of separate itself from D&D was make its rulings clear, and this is the exact opposite of that, and I am not a fan. Not a fan of experiences. Just, they feel like feats, and I am not a feats person in D&D, so they just feel like feats, and you get 3 of them by level 2. You have 3 of these fucking things. One of them is +2, and 2 of them are +1. You won't get another one until you hit, like, level 5, and then you won't get another one until you hit level 8. But that's 5. You effectively get 5 fucking feats throughout the game up to level 10. And level 10 at the max. So I don't like this. It's way too vague, way too random. It's going to start way too many conversations. It's going to slow the game right down to 0. Not a fan. Not a fan of experiences. Again, I don't think this is going to leave. I think they very much like the idea of experiences, but I don't. I'd rather it be like, I'd rather it just be written out. You get like an entire page or 2 or 3 pages dedicated to experiences, and then you pick the ones you like. If you want to change the wording of like what the title of it is after, fine. But I think there should be like an entire page to like preset experiences. That way they're like, you know what these ones are going to be used for and when. I feel like that would make more sense to me as opposed to coming up with whatever the random shit you want, because it's way too vague for that. So my next con is no initiative. So I have to explain a little bit about the combat before I talk about why the no initiative thing sort of irks me a little bit. This is kind of a weaker con in my opinion because I could be swayed depending on who I'm playing with. So first of all, combat works like this. No initiative, you just go whenever. A player chooses to go and then they do their actions, the next player goes until a fail happens or someone rolls with fear. And then the DM gets to go. The way the DM gets to sort of do things is for however many like actions were taken before the DM gets to go, they accumulate action tokens on an action tracker card. And that determines how many actions they can take once a fail or a fear happens. And I think that's an interesting idea, right? I think that's interesting. The way that sort of the DM can slot himself or herself or themselves into the sort of action is interesting. But it creates this, the way that I've sort of thought about it is, it creates a pendulum of, on one side, when it's like all the way up on one side, the players are absolutely fucking wrecking things, and then all of a sudden it swings to the exact opposite side, and now all of a sudden the DM is wrecking shit. There's no in between. It's either the players wreck or the DM wrecks. And that's sort of what I'm seeing based on like what I've read and what I've seen in the game. It's either players absolutely dominate or the DM gets to dominate. And I feel like that is a bad thing because there's nothing in between. There's no moments of like, okay, there's like no moments of in between where no one's getting hit. It's either everyone's hitting or the DM hits you. And I feel like that's kind of iffy to me. But to go back to initiative, which is the actual con of this sort of conversation, with no initiative, there are going to be players who will just never go. And I feel like that's a big issue that was never really talked about. Ashley did mention it at the end of their one shot, but to me that doesn't make sense because she's kind of been playing this with these people for forever, and I don't feel like she's a very shy, timid person when they play the game and like when they play D&D. So I get where she was coming from, but she didn't feel like she would know when to stand up, and that is real. And that is the problem of this no initiative thing. I have a player at my D&D game where if I didn't say, hey, it's your turn, she would never fucking go. She would never, like, know when to go. She would never stand up and say, hey, it's my turn, you missed me. That would never happen. I swear to God, that would never happen. And there's players like that all over the place who would never sort of stand up and be like, hey, it's my turn, I need to do this. If they don't stand up, they're just going to get passed over. And that's a thing that will happen. It just will. So to not have initiative to me leaves those players in a very bad spot. And I feel like this could be tweaked very easily by saying everyone has to get a go before we move on to the next round, before you can go again, or something like that. But the way that it works right now, that is not the case, and I think it should be. Or you just fucking add initiative, and then like the initiative is only for players. And you all roll like your 2d12s, and whoever has the highest roll goes first, whoever has the lowest roll goes last, and then as time goes on, the DM gets to sort of interject with their stuff. It's almost like every enemy would have like legendary actions in D&D. So I kind of like that more. The idea of rolling initiative for the players so that the way the players have a set way to go, and then as action tokens are accumulated, the DM gets to go. I think that makes a lot more sense than just no initiative whatsoever. And my last con is going to be class/domain customization. Now hang on. I said this was a pro earlier, so what am I talking about? Well, I have a small issue with how everything works with this here, okay? So throughout the game, you're going to be constantly swapping your abilities. You're going to be constantly swapping through different domains, right? So say if you're a warrior, you have the blade and bone domain. Throughout the entire game, you're likely going to see everything available to that class. You have 5 slots. You're constantly going to be switching them out because you can switch them out on rests. You can switch them out and take stress points. You're constantly going to be doing that. So by the time you're done with a campaign, you're going to see everything the warrior class has available to it. So when the next campaign rolls around and someone wants to play a warrior, they'll be playing the exact same character as the previous player who played a warrior. The only thing that'll change might be their weapons, their armor, and their race. That'll be the only thing different. Abilities will all be the same. Domains will be the same. And that is my small issue here. There is a extreme amount of customization within the warrior class, but it's within a bubble, if that makes sense. It's a bubble that isn't very big. It's really cool and interesting that you can mix and match as you go, but by the time you end a campaign, you're going to see all of the mixing and matching of that class. And I think that's kind of a negative, because when someone goes to do that class later, because they liked what you were doing, they're going to very quickly see the fact that, oh shit, I'm doing the exact same thing that player did. Mixing and matching the exact same domain stuff. So why would I ever want to play a warrior 2 games in a row? Why would one person at a table for the first game, they played a warrior, so why would someone want to play that same class, same character again later? There's very little replayability within the classes right now. Fixable as the day is long, okay? This is super fixable. 1, add more domains. 2, add more subclasses. Whatever the hell, right? There are subclasses, by the way, but there's only like 3 things you get for each of them. There's like a foundation, there's a mastery, and there's one more in between the two, of which I forget the name of. But that doesn't change enough. The domains are still the same. So the domain customization and mixing and matching leads to non-play replayability for the next campaign if someone wants to play that class. It'll be the exact same thing. So, yeah, obviously this is fixable. They just have to add more shit, which is going to be a thing they do. But as it stands right now, the customization leads to them not being replayable in like the next campaign. So there you have it, my pros and cons for the Daggerheart open beta. As of right now, things will change as time goes on. So if I get more used to it, or eventually once I actually get to play test it, because as of right now I haven't been able to play test it, which I really want to, but we haven't been able to because there's a massive fucking thing I have to read. But yeah, eventually I will play test this, and then I'll make another video about it saying, hey, I finally play tested it. Here are some more things I wish could change, blah, blah, blah. Overall, I very much enjoy the idea of the game. I very much enjoy a lot of the concepts within the game. The 4 things that I mentioned are like the only things I don't like about the game. So I think that's a very strong start for Daggerheart. So the 4 things I mentioned are the only things I'm not very big on as of right now. Maybe I'll find something else when I play test it that I'm not a big fan of. But overall, I very much do enjoy what this game is. And I think it's very good. Now, do I think this game is going to replace D&D for Critical Role? 50-50 on that, honestly. I feel like it would be better for them to do both. I feel like they should do Mondays. Mondays should be Daggerheart, and Thursdays should be Critical Role or D&D. I think that would be a perfect thing, because that way you'll get the people who want to see Daggerheart and who love Daggerheart, and then you'll get to keep the people who like D&D. Because I get the feeling that if they were to drop D&D, they might lose a good portion of the fan base. Yes, I know a lot of people are sort of shitting on D&D right now, which makes no fucking sense. They should be shitting on WotC and Hasbro, because there's so many creators out there who make awesome D&D content that is much cheaper. Some of it's free. Don't hate on D&D, because that, shits on the creators of D&D stuff, like, like third-party, like, D&D stuff, or, content creators for D&D, homebrew stuff. Don't shit on the game. Shit on the fucking company who's being a shithead. Don't shit on D&D. D&D has done nothing wrong to you. It's WotC and Hasbro who's done something wrong to all of us. So, just want to put that out there. But I feel like the best thing that Critical Role could do would be to have both. Because there are definitely people who are going to want to see Critical Role and keep it being, D&D. And then there's going to be people who want to see something else and something new. Because the way that Daggerheart is presented right now, it doesn't feel like it would fit in Exandria. And I would love to see Exandria continue going. Because, and with the difference in races and stuff like that, like the way fairies work in this game, like insect people, that is not a thing that's appeared in Exandria yet. So realistically, it's kind of hard to be like, okay, this is Exandria still. I don't think that's the case, especially because they came up with this new world for the one shot, and people fucking love this cast of characters. I do too. I think it's a great group. I think they were called the Menagerie. Really cool. Let's have a game of Daggerheart over here and a game of D&D over here. We'll call it Critical Role, and we'll leave Exandria alone and have Exandria be its own thing, and then you can have Daggerheart and the Menagerie over here. That's perfectly fine to me. I think that's a dope idea, to have both. Monday is Daggerheart, Thursday is Critical Role, D&D. I think that's perfect, personally, and I hope that's what they do. I get the feeling that's what they're going to do, based on how the one-shot ended, where they were like, let us know if you want to see more. I think that's an interesting sort of, like, way of looking at things. Like, based on that wording, to me, sounds like if you guys want more of it, we will give you more. But we're going to stick with this thing over here as well. I think that's a perfect idea. I don't know. But anyway, this has been the pros and cons of this video. This video is a mess. It's been hard for me to sort of put into words throughout this entire video. And I'm sure you've noticed. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you guys on Friday for the recap of episode 89 of Campaign 3 of Critical Role, which is D&D, not Daggerheart. But anyway, I'll see you guys then. Peace.